Hey guys, I want to spend some time today in Daniel. So we're going to be in Daniel chapter 6. We're taking it all the way back to the Old Testament. It's about time that we hung out there for a little bit. So first of all, Daniel, we're going to be in chapter 6, like I said, but he was born, he was of royal birth. So he was taken captive to Babylon as a young man, but he was an impressive individual. So we're not going to read all of these verses, but we're just going to read some here and there. So in chapter 6, it says, then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. This is in verse 7. Or I lied, verse 3. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So again, that just shows and affirms that he was quite the individual. This spirit was the spirit of the Lord. He had the Lord. He served the Lord. And it was noticeable. So we go on to see that the high officials were looking for a complaint against him. They could not stand that he was going to have a special place in the kingdom when he served God. So I do want to ask, have you ever encountered trouble because you're a Christian? Have you ever encountered persecution because of what you believe in? So that's kind of what we're seeing here. But I just want to encourage you that the Lord says that they persecuted me, they're going to hate you. Which I say encouraging because we're serving the Lord and he is to be feared. And in this life, we should be looking for fear of the Lord. We should be preaching fear of the Lord and not fear of man. So oftentimes we can be just overwhelmed with fear of man instead of fear of God. And so it's encouraging that we see that Daniel, he had fear of God. And he loved the Lord, and it was showing. And that is so cool. So it goes on to say that these high officials basically went and had the king sign a decree that said that no one could worship any other god but the king, which was huge because Daniel served the Lord. And they really did this to get at Daniel. So I don't know if you've ever been through something in your life where people are doing it to get at you, are putting things in place to specifically hurt you and to affect your relationship with God. Well, you know what Daniel did? Let's go ahead and go to verse 10. So verse 10 in chapter 6, it says, when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. So Daniel had a relationship built with the Lord before this happened. Daniel loved the Lord and he had already previously been meeting with the Lord, but this time he opened up his windows. Everyone could see him and he praised Jesus. He was on his knees before God. They saw this and they sent for him to be killed and to thrown into a lion's den. So basically that's what happened, you guys. The king was sad about this. Do not get me wrong, but it was the law. So he sends him in the lion's den, and guess what? God delivers him. God does exactly because Daniel was obedient. The Lord delivered him and he saved him. He closed the mouth of the lions. He says in verse 22, my God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I have done no harm. The king was exceedingly glad, you guys. He praised God for this. And you know what? He had those high officials and their families thrown and eaten up by the lion's den, and no one saved them. They were done. And guess what? As we read on, King Darius, he wrote to all the people proclaiming that they needed to tremble and fear the God of Daniel, that he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered. Guys, I want to encourage you today by the story of Daniel, go and dive into it, that if you are obedient to the Lord, he will deliver you. If not in this life, then the life after. But it does not go unseen with the Lord that you are being obedient, that you are building that relationship and foundation.